Now, the psyche is spherical and multidimensional, and it radiates out into a probability field that covers all emotion, all probable human experience. Now, within this larger cultural or species probability field, just to clarify, within the species probability field, you have different cultures that emphasize aspects of the human experience. So, for example, in the United States, we emphasize capitalism, which is the free trade of goods and labor for money. We emphasize democracy, which is each person voting for the power structure and participating. And we emphasize a lot of individual freedom and diversity. Now, the opposite of that is what is rejected. So we reject totalitarianism, we reject communism, the idea that things would be totalitarily and communally shared. So there's an opposite point within any given culture that is rejected in order to emphasize and develop that segment of the culture. And in human history, there have been 10,000 cultures, each with their own relative strengths and weaknesses, and every one of them has thought that they're right. Meaning every culture emerges out of an environment in which the slice of culture that is emphasized is a good or seemingly good response to that environment, and in which the area that is denied or repressed is a seemingly poor response to that environment. And so we have the probability field of the environment, and we have the total probability field of the species. And this probability field of the environment, which crystallizes into specific environments and specific points in time and location, leads to a probability field as a culture forms a response to that specific environment. Now, one of the ways to see this is the aspect of environment that is called cold weather. So within the United States, particularly in Upper New York State, you have a phenomena where for months of the year you have up to 3 feet of snow. Now, a culture that can survive in 3 feet of snow for months at a time is a culture that is forward-thinking. So we already have a split then. We say forward-thinking. Now, what forward-thinking also means is mental thinking. it means more thinking and less feeling. And here's how it works. You follow your feelings in July and August and September, and the question is, do you ever want to go out and cut a cord of wood? Do you ever want to go out and save money? Do you ever want to work really hard and not spend that money so you'll have money later? Is there ever a time when that feels good? And for the most part, the answer is no. If you can go swimming, or spend all your money, or enjoy the moment, or not work, you feel better in June, July, August, those nice warm summer days. And you feel really great all the way up until the point that the snow falls. If you're in 3 feet of snow and you have not made financial preparation, you haven't made heat preparation, you haven't made food preparation, you're dead. Now, long before you die, you experience terror, trauma, pain, anxiety, uncertainty, and this is a horrible feeling. You don't want to feel that way again. Who do you attack within the psyche to stop feeling that way again? Well, you attack your feelings. Because if you had thought more about the cycle of the weather, rather than enjoyed the swimming, you would have cut wood. You would have stacked wood. You would have cut enough wood. You would have dried the wood. You would have organized a wood stove. You would have built a little hut. You would have insulated the hut. You would have gotten a snow shovel. You would have stored up food. Now, all of that is uncomfortable work. But if you don't do it in a cold weather climate, you experience trauma and death. Now you take this opposite environment over here, the warm tropical weather of Thailand. It's warm and tropical year-round. Now when you bring a lot of mental energy and structure and planning and stress and pain levels go up. Stress and pain levels go up because every time you think and delay gratification, every time you make a plan and work hard to invest in the future, pain goes up, stress goes up, discomfort goes up, work goes up, discipline goes up. Now, in Thailand, you don't have 3 feet of snow in the winter. And so the question is, why are you working so hard? Why are you stressing so much to do things that nobody wants to do just because when the future is already comfortable? When the present is already comfortable, when you don't have to do any of that work in order to survive. For example, if you just go ahead and build a bigger house because it's possible, you have an accident with a power tool. It's certainly possible that you miss part of your childhood, growing up. And so there's a phenomena in which abundant tropical countries, for example, in Thailand, there's fresh fish, there's lots of fresh edible fruits, things are very inexpensive, you don't need a building permit to put up a little shack. And as a result, when you're more relaxed in the present, you're happier, you're lower stress, you're healthier. And the culture reflects that. A culture is a response to a specific environment at a specific period of time. Once it coalesces around that experience of time, it then becomes self-perpetuating. Now, the problem is, on an individual level, that the psyche is still expressed, the 360-degree probability of the psyche, in any group of 100 people. The archetypal energies of the psyche will seek to come forward. The default shape, the most graceful shape in the universe, is the sphere. And so even in cold countries or tropical countries, even in this place or this place, people will be born that want to express the full archetypal energies of the psyche. The playful lover will emerge in a community. The disciplinarian will emerge in a community. The magical child will emerge in the community. The wisdom teacher will emerge in the community. The mother will emerge in the community. These personas that are part of an archetypal framework will emerge to form a circle. However, about 30% of these persona will be directly in opposition to the predominant culture. Now, as Warren Buffett points out, he's incredibly lucky to be born in the United States in a capitalist regime where his unique talent of sociopathically relating with numbers and the discipline of stock analysis is one of our culture's most valued skills, making Warren Buffett one of the richest individuals on the planet and one of the most successful investors of all time. In other words, in a cold country where planning for the future is highly prioritized to survive, leading to lineal thought, leading to an association of material possession with survival, leading to an elevation of money as a symbol of value, and leading to a yet further elevation of investing as the pinnacle technology of turning money into more money. A sociopathic, meaning unburdened by emotion, a sociopathic investor that constantly analyzes and holds tight and makes people a lot of money is the single most valuable person in our cult hierarchy. Now, as Warren is humble enough to point out, were he working in a slave ship, if he were born a slave in the 1800s, he would not only not be singled out for honor, he'd probably be dead because his body is nothing to write home about in terms of muscle and all of that. If he was born into a singing culture, his current talents would make him useless and a reject. If he was in a culture where everyone wanted him to relax and have fun, again, not his strong point. But because he occupies one of the personas in a position on the archetypal spectrum of the culture and is born into a time and place where that value is, and particular trait is highly prized, he climbs to the top of the pyramid. Whereas in the same culture, the empathic, intuitive artist, the empathic and intuitive care for the community persona is in opposition to the cultural hierarchy of values and expression. And as such, will be at the bottom of the cultural ranking system, not only not prized and valued in becoming the richest person, but marginalized, ignored, patronized, insignificant, and at times shamed or abused in that low-ranking position. Now, it's very tempting in the evolution of a culture, in the evolution of a species, for these few people, the top 10%, who are born in the position of the gifted ones within the cultural framework, to assume that there is something objectively better about being good at stock investing than being good at singing. Objectively better at being good at mowing down people with machine guns or making weaponry than there is with dance or nursing a baby in a way that minimizes trauma. Just as when the culture is reversed in another situation, in another environment, where the culture emphasizes the feminine, it will be the person with the most sinuous dance, with the most present gaze, with the most beautiful song that is elevated to the peak of the cultural hierarchy. And a Warren Buffett will be viewed as incompetent, ungraceful, useless in almost every respect, not good at sports, not good at dance, not good at singing, the person who is despised and marginalized. The same is true within the individual. At times of great change and crisis, it is often the sociopathic reptilian brain, fight, flight, freeze, and analyze, fight, flight, freeze, and analyze, that gets an individual through a massive debt to bankruptcy process, through moving house, and I can't feel anything, I don't want to look at art, don't distract me with anything, I have single band focus, narrow single band focus, no emotion, nothing, strategy, get this done, 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 get this done. Okay, now I have a little bit of room for some art or a drink or a little bit of relaxation. But just this much, because I'm in crisis and this is the persona within the psyche, that can get me through this crisis, that can help me navigate. Now, as soon as I'm through this terrain in the psyche, the very personas that helped me move state, that helped me apply for a visa, are the very personas that stand in my way of blossoming into a rich social life. Because if I cannot transition into joy, into connection, into empathy, if my inner Hitler, get this done, this done, this done, this done, and this done, is dictating the show, it's not fun to be around. Well, now the lack of socialization can threaten a survival in a way that without that focus, your survival was threatened before. And so there's an ecological relationship on an individual level, on a national level, and as a species level between the challenges presented by the environment, the probability field of the species, and this natural cycle through the archetypal personas within the self and within the culture, in its healthy way responds, for example, in the United States, where people worked really, really, really hard to get cars and homes, etc., and now they're working really, really hard and even harder to maintain them. There needs to be a pivot from the obsession of masculine energy into its feminine pole, of enjoying the presence. Enjoying the presence, the felt experience of feminine energy that requires a different set of skills and traits. However, what we run into in this need for evolution, this need for the wheel to turn. You see, the wheel needs to turn. You need a period of imbalance because for forward motion to occur, there is always some part that is leaning out of whack, that is out of symmetry. If you look at the process of walking, one step forward, you lean into it, and another step forward, you lean into it. And yet at some point, if you just keep leaning, anything reaches a level of toxicity as it keeps being amplified into an extreme point. And that's the point where a very awkward pivot needs to take place. And it's one of the reasons mythology, anthropology, and an understanding of 10,000 cultures throughout world history is so important. To understand when and how to help pivot from one value hierarchy that responds to one situation to another that responds to another situation. Which, of course, brings us into the uncertain terrain of image and identity, which is a terrifying terrain for everyone who has unresolved trauma. Unresolved trauma means that you're terrified of the unknown, because unresolved trauma has trigger points that takes you into timeless voids in which you feel your survival is in jeopardy, financially, emotionally, or physically. So there's this process, and one of the most healthy things that any culture can do is appreciate its unique leans and strengths and leaning into its domain in its where it's placing most of its value and emphasis. But to do so from an objective position that understands that its unique place in time and history and in the species is not objectively superior. And depending on the situation, it may be objectively damaging, as in the consumerism of Western culture, reaching a point with 102 metric tons of garbage with 1,500 metric tons of CO2, with 90,000 gallons of gas per person consumed in the United States. You realize that lean towards consumption and external technology is starting to lean into a place where it challenges the survival of the species as that meme gets replicated and transmitted around the world, and that what's needed is to have a great respect for what each culture brings to the continuum. And what's needed on an individual level as we look at our own challenges, etc., is to have a great respect for the counterpoints on the wheel. The counterpoints on the wheel that are reflected in individuals who have none of our strength, or very little of it, but have an exceptional strength of their own that is unacknowledged and unrecognized.